Okay, just a few points, please, colleagues. If during the meeting a member would like to ask a question or raise a point, can I ask you to use the chat function and just write "speak" as a comment? But also, I'll be looking out, so if you raise your hand as well, that won't do any harm. When invited to speak, members should unmute their microphones and switch on their video. When members have finished speaking, they should mute their microphone and switch off the video. This is sort of standard county council proceedings. We seem to be doing okay. Having said that, all your pictures are coming through quite clearly. Right, members are requested to indicate using the chat function. Done that. If members are temporarily or permanently leaving the meeting, could they also use the chat function? If members lose connection during the meeting, it is recommended that they end the call using the red phone icon and rejoin via the meeting link provided. If a member does lose connection, I'll pause the meeting for a period to allow that member to rejoin the meeting. If the member's not rejoined the meeting by the time I recommence the meeting, the member will be treated as having left the meeting during the period of their absence. Right, before we start the official business on the agenda, can I ask Steve Blagg, our clerk to S.A.C.R.E, to ask members to confirm their presence?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll read out Christian and other religious denominations first. Tanwir Ahmed.
Yes, I'm here.
Chris Burke, you're here. Peter Crosby.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Peter. Amanda Grant.
Thank you, yes.
Andrew Hornsby. Andrews might be late, Chairman. Probably 10 minutes late.
Okay, Steve.
And similarly with Claire Simons.
Okay.
Swarthy Screen Vason. I'll come back.
No, I don't think so.
Sean Wade.
Yes, here.
Right, thank you, Sean. Church of England, Cherry Edwards, OBE.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
Lindsay Norris.
Yes, I'm here.
Mark Plater.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. The teachers panel, Jennifer King.
Yes, I'm here.
Elizabeth Moore.
Yes, I'm here.
Jane Watson. I've seen Jane then.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Jane. Lincolnshire County Council members, Councillor Bob Adams.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Brockway.
Present.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
Present.
Thank you, Mark. Co-opted member, Jack Dryden. No, Jack Dryden. Officer representation, Chairman, obviously myself, Wendy Harrison, the RE advisor, and Gillian Giorgio, diocesan RE advisor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Steve, and thank you, colleagues. It's a pleasure to have you all here. And just something we don't normally say, but as it is the AGM, I wonder if we could particularly thank Steve for what is now his many years of work supporting us. Just thought I'd embarrass him by saying that. Okay. Can I ask Cherry Edwards, OBE, our colleague and vice chair, to give us our opening reflections, please? Thank you, Cherry.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And it's so lovely to be with you all, if only virtually. I look forward to the day that we can all be together again. When I was thinking about the reflections today, some of the words of Nelson Mandela came to mind when he, particularly in these difficult times we're living in, when he said that we must all work hard to be the change that we want to see in the world. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, Jesus in this parable said, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was alone and away from home and you invited me into your house. I was without clothes and you gave me something to wear. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you helped me. The church has taken this list of acts of kindness in this parable and fashioned them into acts of mercy. Feed the hungry, give water to the thirsty, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, visit the imprisoned. We are reminded, particularly in these difficult COVID times, that the richest life is not to live for ourselves, but to live for others. We are called out to live out these acts of mercy and kindness. We can, all of us here, quote so many examples of seeing this reflected in words and actions of those of differing faiths and beliefs within our communities and the wider world. At the beginning of December, we will be moving into the time of Advent, 4 weeks when Christians and many others prepare for the birth of Jesus. The Advent candles that are lit at the beginning of each week of Advent represent hope, peace, love, and joy. Just as with the acts of mercy, we all remember that hope, peace, love, and joy are not only things we all wish and pray for, they're something we make, something we do, something we are, and something we show and give to others. Help us to reflect on how we can be effective as a S.A.C.R.E. As members, we come from differing backgrounds, faiths, and beliefs. We come together with feelings of mutual respect, trust, and care. We share the responsibilities that we've chosen to embrace in the knowledge that the decisions we make will have an impact on the teaching of RE in our county and beyond. We will always seek to take time to reflect on matters that come before us, ensuring that we gather information to come to sound decisions. In the words of Bishop Nicholas of Grantham, working with and sharing together. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that, Cherry, and for uniting us around the themes of peace, hope, and joy and our duty as S.A.C.R.E. Really grateful for those words. Also, it's a pleasure to hear about Bishop Nicholas of Grantham, who was a speaker at one of my Catenian meetings in Lincoln. So we see him with great joy. Okay, we're now moving to, and before that, also I'd like to thank Wendy and Giorgio and our other officers who've assisted us over the last year, primarily those two. I'd now like to move to item 2, election of chairman, and I'll ask Steve Blagg to conduct this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And members, this is for the election of chairman for the period from today until the AGM in November 2021. So can I have a nomination for chairman, please?
Very happy to propose Councillor Chris Burke.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brockway. Now, in terms of voting, I will assume all members are in favour unless they state otherwise in the chat column. Now, if anybody is against Councillor Chris Burke's election, then we will need to go to a formal vote. So can you indicate now if you are against Chris Burke's? I'll give you about a minute to indicate. It seems to be unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. You are elected chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your confidence, colleagues. It's I feel quite humble. May I move? So if I could thank all of those present for that support and also for your work and support during the past year. Can I move now to item 3, please, election of vice chair? And I think we follow the same procedure that we followed with Steve. I am in support of our vice chair, but can I have a nomination for vice chair, please?
I'd be very happy to nominate Cherry. That's Amanda.
Thank you, colleague. Could I have a seconder for the nomination, please?
Yes, I'm very happy to second that. Mark Plater.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, colleagues. I will assume all members are in favour unless they state otherwise in chat. If anyone is against, I would then ask Steve to conduct a formal vote. I'm looking at the chat thing and I'm not seeing any votes against. All right, colleagues, that's unanimous. Congratulations, Cherry. I look forward to working with you for another year. Bless you.
Thank you.
Having to put up with me for another year. Gosh.
And well, thank you, and thank you everybody for your confidence. And can I thank you very much, Chair, for the work that you've been doing over the past year, and also very much to Steve for all his support and care and work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Moving to item 4, colleagues, apologies for absence and for member changes. Steve, have we received any apologies or membership changes?
We have, Chairman, in terms of apologies. Oh, I beg your pardon. Claire Simons, again, Chairman, could be late. If she doesn't arrive, apologies will be noted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks. Since the last meeting, Kay Sutherland, a teacher representative, has retired. And I'm sure we want to place on record our thanks to Kay for her marvellous contribution to S.A.C.R.E. And I'd like to record that as a vote of thanks unanimously if everybody is nodding at me. I'm sure you all are. Also, it gives me great pleasure to inform members that Jenny King, head of RE at Welton William Farr School, and Jane Watson, head teacher at Gonnaby Hill Foot Church of England Primary School, Grantham, have been appointed as teacher representatives on Committee C. May I hugely welcome that professional contribution, which is vital to our work. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny and Jane. As we mentioned, really appreciated Kay Sutherland's work. I also like to welcome formally to, as this is the AGM, Sean Wade, on behalf of the Pentecostal churches, who's pastor of Bridge Church in Lincoln. You are really welcome, Sean. Have I missed anybody out, Steve?
No, I don't think you have, Chairman.
And also, if I could just, as it is the AGM again, we started the process in a different pre-COVID world of meeting in different locations. And we had a marvellous welcome at Lincoln Mosque and a conducted tour, which was super. And I have the pictures of it on our Facebook page, which I would encourage members to visit and join. Could I take it that members would be happy for us to continue that process once we get back to 3D reality? We're all in favour of continuing to meet in different places.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. You're all out there. Oh, good.
I just unmuted to say yes to that. Okay.
Thank you. Sometimes I feel like one of those actors on a darkened stage and peering out to see if the audience is there. Also, I'd like your support to invite guest speakers to S.A.C.R.E to talk about their faith. I think we could start by asking those who are already members of S.A.C.R.E, and I'd appreciate members' views on that, but also open to inviting leaders of other faiths. I've trialed this with my little Catenian group in Lincoln, which is a Catholic men and families group, and we've had about 6 or 7 speakers, and I'll steal from that speakers list if you approve of the idea. But the speakers would include people present, but also I had speakers. Sean Wade has spoken at the Catenians, and also the Reverend Thompson, who the leader of the Methodist Church, and quite a number of others. So I just appreciate your views on that, colleagues.
Giorgio wants to speak, I think, Chris.
Please do.
Thank you. I think that that's a really good idea as long as we can keep it tight to the purposes of S.A.C.R.E in terms of supporting schools. So making sure that if we are inviting speakers, asking them to consider when they speak to us about how we might be able to communicate this to schools to support either their religious education or their collective worship.
I think that's very useful. Keep us on the straight and narrow.
I think, Chris, we had that conversation as well, didn't we, when you first brought it up, that our focus is about schools and education. But having said that, it's something we do in Leicester S.A.C.R.E, and once, as Jill said, once they understand that it is tied to that job, that focus, it does seem to work really well. So, yeah, good point, Jill, I think. Thanks,
Wendy. Yeah, any other points? Sorry, I'm not seeing chat very well on my screen. I'll just see if I can alter it a bit.
I agree with what's just been said by Gillian as well, and Wendy.
Thanks, Cherry. Okay, that's good. And I've also, in the chat, Amanda's commented there on Reverend Bruce Thompson as an excellent speaker. Thank you for that. And also you've mentioned Bruce's book on Judaism, which I have a signed copy from him. I've abused my position to get that. Are we, does anybody else want to speak? Are we okay? Just do speak if you want to. But otherwise, can I take it that we're all in favour? Yeah. Is everybody nodding? Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Oh, that works. Yes, I can see everybody going yes. Nobody said no. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, if that's okay. This is just declarations of interest. Are there, if I could ask for declarations of interest now, or if something comes up later you feel you need to declare, feel free to do so. Any declarations of interest? I can actually see the chat now, and nobody's saying that they have a declaration of interest. We're getting there. Thank you. Item 6, minutes of the previous meeting with S.A.C.R.E, which was 23rd of June. Could I have a mover for the minutes, please, as a correct record? If you want to indicate in the chat.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy to propose those, Chris. It's Mark Whittington.
Thank you, Mark. That's brilliant.
Chairman, we've got Gillian Giorgio.
Okay, would you like to speak, Gillian?
Yes, please. Thank you. Sorry, just quickly, a very quick clarification on page 7 of those minutes. I think there's only one slight tweak there. In the second bullet point paragraph from the top, quite near the bottom of that paragraph, Steve, there's something there about officers stating that acts of collective worship were seen as anachronistic in some Church of England schools. I think that should read some schools, not Church of England schools.
Chairman, did you want me to, just for clarification, did you want me to show on the screen where Gillian was pointing to in terms of that amendment? Would it help other members just to clarification wise?
I think we'll just be very impressed if you can do that, Steve, actually, yeah.
Try, Chairman. We'll try.
Oh, I hope you can now.
Yeah. Oh, vanished. Just a minute, Chairman. No. Sorry, Chairman, I'm having issues. I do apologise.
Not to worry. I think we've actually got Gillian's point, can I suggest that we accept Gillian's amendment? Is everybody in favour of that? No objections. So in essence, that means that we're generalising the point made, schools rather than particularly Anglican schools, if we're all okay with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Are there any objections to the minutes thus amended? I've seen no I've seen no amendments. Councillor Adams is abstaining as he wasn't present. Thank you for that. Okay, so we all appear to be in favour. Thank you for that. Any discussion on the minutes at all?
Yes, please, Chair. Bottom of page 6. I just wondered whether did Gillian approach the Diocesan Director of Education / the Chair of the Board to see if they thought it was a good idea that we could have the presentation to the full board?
Yes, Cherry, I did share that with the Diocesan Director of Education, and I'm afraid I am not the agenda setter for those meetings. So she has had that request and she has showed interest in it, but I have not yet seen the agenda for the next board meeting of the Diocesan Board of Education. So she is aware of it.
Oh, thank you, Gillian, very much. Yes, and I know I haven't seen it either, but thank you very much for passing that on. Thank you.
Thanks, colleagues. Any other items? Not seeing anything in the chat. Do I have a seconder? Because I forgot to ask for a seconder.
Yes, Chair, Cherry.
Thanks, Cherry. Okay, so if we're okay, if there's no further discussions, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 7, which is correspondence by the chairman. I haven't had any correspondence. And then item 8 is annual review of S.A.C.R.E's membership. The Constitution requires S.A.C.R.E to review its membership annually. The current membership is shown on the agenda. You will note we still have vacancies on all of the committees. I would like to take the opportunity at this stage of the meeting to mention 2 things. So under item 9, effects of COVID-19 on schools. Can I ask Wendy to lead on this issue and then others can contribute?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said about membership, Chris. Have we finished that item?
I can go back to it.
No, it's okay. I just wondered if I missed anything. Is it just, I was just saying that although we've made lots of efforts to fill gaps, there are still 1 or 2 that, there are still spaces in our membership.
Steve,
okay, just to confirm that really with Steve, really.
Yeah, Chairman, just to let you know that on the Christian and other religious denominations, I think we're 2 short still.
Yeah, I emailed you today, I think, Steve, about it, yeah.
On the Church of England, obviously, I'm trying to think who's left that. We've got 4.
Yeah.
We're 1 vacancy for Church of England. Teachers panel, we've now got 3, so we've just got the 1 vacancy.
Just the 1.
Lincolnshire County Council, we've got 3 and 1 vacancy. As I say, Jack Dryden, we haven't seen Jack for some time, have we, Chairman?
No, that's true. It might be something we'd want to follow up to see if Jack wants to nominate somebody else. Yeah. I could leave that in your hands, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the other vacancies, I wonder if I could ask members to see if we could fill those vacancies. The wider we are, the better. I mean, I'm really pleased that we've expanded in some areas. But but there are always other people to come along and freshen us up, if you know what I mean, and make us more, you know, relevant. Perhaps, I don't know. I'm looking for a word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple of Councillor Brockway wants to speak, I think, Chris.
Okay, Councillor. Yeah, please speak.
Thank you. Chairman, I wonder, is there any reason why we can't have some youth input here? We talk about the RE curriculum, but we never actually include here amongst ourselves those people to whom the curriculum is delivered. And I do wonder whether we could have a youth representative, maybe a sixth former who's studying at A level or GCSE or something like that. And I can think of one or two people. For instance, there's a chap called Mr. Peter Walton in S.A.C.R.E, an older gentleman who's not religious as far as I know, but would make enormously powerful contributions. And if you're talking about going broad, I would just suggest that sort of area. Thank you, Chairman.
I think that's very, very useful. Wendy, is that an area we could pursue?
Actually, Councillor Brockway was breaking up when she was speaking,
Yeah.
so I didn't catch all that.
Yes,
Was it about?
full.
No, it's not your fault. It might be my fault, my connection.
No.
Was it about younger people being on
Yes.
S.A.C.R.E?
I
Okay.
was suggesting those to whom the curriculum is delivered.
Yeah.
So we see that response from the end point. And also I was thinking of a chap called Peter Walton in S.A.C.R.E who makes enormous contributions. Older chap in his 80s, enormous contribution to this sort of committee. I don't know his religion, if he has any, but he's the kind of person who he's energetic and would support and you know, just that's so I'll just give you that name and then I do really advocate his contribution.
Yeah, I was going to say there's 2 points really to make. That the criteria for S.A.C.R.E membership is not actually related to age particularly. It's more related to the criteria for being on one of the 4 committees. So that's one point I'd make. The second point is some of you may remember that years ago quite a few S.A.C.R.Es had set up what Mark, you might remember us talking about this some time ago. They set up what they called youth S.A.C.R.Es, which ran alongside. They had separate meetings, but they were actually separate from the main S.A.C.R.E and were actually completely composed of pupils, students from schools. So that's something some of you may know about. I see that in the chat, one of you have made the point that if we have people from schools, we'd have to think about when we were meeting and so on. But there's 2 issues there. One is that age doesn't actually bar people from being on S.A.C.R.E. It's more about belonging to committees. And the second point is it is possible for local authorities to have youth S.A.C.R.Es in which they discuss similar issues to us, but they meet separately. So there are 2 things to consider at the same time, really, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark's just responded and said there are still a few youth S.A.C.R.Es on the go. And these included at one time as well, if you remember, Mark, RE ambassadors from schools, which was another project that I think was started by RE today in Natre. Yeah. So we could look into that, is the answer, is the short answer. Yeah. Yeah, Amanda's saying they had a youth S.A.C.R.E in the Midlands too. So it's something we might want to look into.
Right. So we've got some models we can work with there then. Which,
yeah, sure.
Thanks for that, Cherry. I see you saying that too. Jane, is that in the direction you wanted to go? Would you like us to invite Peter Walton? Do you think that would be an idea?
Well, I don't know who you're asking, Chairman, but I would encourage you to do so. He sits on governance committees and things, and he's a very thoughtful contributor. He really reads the stuff and gets into it, you know.
Right. Thank you very much for that. We'll explore that then for the next S.A.C.R.E.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Oh, Cherry.
Yes, Cherry.
Okay, just to say, Chair, that would be explored thoroughly with further conversations, etc., bearing in mind the criteria for membership, etc.
Yeah, I was thinking making contact, and perhaps he could be somebody that could come and give us a talk initially. I think that's where we were going with that. and then explore if he would be interested in membership, how that might work. Is that okay? Is that where we're going with that?
Yes, I would be happy as long as S.A.C.R.E conversations happen before I take on board everything that's been said about the gentleman. But nevertheless, I think that there has to be a process, a very clear process by which anybody is appointed to the S.A.C.R.E.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you for that, Sherry. Yeah, I think this is very much about a conversation with Peter and asking him to come and speak to us. And then there's an entirely separate conversation if he's interested in doing any more. And of course, there's a process of appointment. So you're quite right to remind us, Cherry. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. I've got it. And I've seen Wendy saying that she'll progress that. That's kind of you. Thanks for that, Wendy. Okay. And I'm just looking back to where we are in my notes.
Number 9, Chairman.
Thank you. Number 9. So, Wendy, is anything that you want to add in terms of the effects of COVID-19 on schools?
Oops. I don't want to, but did you want me to just, well, I could, but I'm not in a school. So I have been in some schools over the past few weeks, and it's clearly a very different picture to what it was some time ago. I've been in schools where I've met with teachers in rooms where there's perhaps only been about 3 of us, so it's felt relatively normal. I was in a school, not in Lincolnshire, but a few weeks ago where every single pupil was wearing a visor, which is a very interesting scenario. And I was amazed how quickly pupils have adapted to it. Quite scary, really, but they had. And I thought it might be a good idea to have this item on the agenda just from a couple of our S.A.C.R.E members to give us a bit of insight of what is it like being in school at the moment in terms of RE and how the curriculum's perhaps been changed a bit, but also their feelings generally. So there's just a couple of people are going to give some input here. So Liz, do you want to start us off? Liz, are you there?
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm happy to. We are a federation of 2 schools, and both of our schools are having quite different experiences. Our small school has less than 30 children in it, so actually they are able to operate just as one bubble in their entirety. And in fact, in terms of their curriculum, there has been very little impact because they don't need to offer a staggered start or a staggered drop-off or any such thing that could impact on the timing of the school day. In our larger school, we have around 230 pupils, and things are really quite different. So we have implemented a staggered start and a staggered drop-off. So we have 4 times across half an hour at the beginning of the day and 4 times across half an hour at the end of the day. And we put a lot of thought as to how we could make those staggers practical. So this sounds like a small thing, but it has a really big thing really big impact on how we're able to run. We were concerned that we didn't want families to be dropping off in year groups, because the impact of that could be that if you had multiple children in the school, you'd be coming back multiple times to drop off. And we were concerned that actually there's quite limited pathway space outside the school. It doesn't make sense to us to implement a kind of walking drop-off system and then encourage gathering at the outside. So what we actually did was we decided to use house teams, because all our families are the same colour house team. So we have yellow drop-off and red drop-off and so on. And that has worked really well for us because it means we get entire families in one go, which means that we're able to distance effectively. So from a COVID point of view, that has been quite a sensible method of making sure that we get a steady stream of people in and a steady stream of people out, and no huddles or gathers or compromised social distancing. However, the impact in school is that means it takes half an hour to get all the children in, and it takes half an hour to get all the children out. So in terms of being in the classroom, you will have your first group for 15 minutes on their own in the morning, and then 2 groups, and then 3 groups. And eventually, after half an hour, you'll have everybody. So that does have quite an impact. So what we've done is we have tried to make sure that we have as full and broad a curriculum as possible. So we are teaching everything that we would normally teach, but we have had to accept that on a weekly basis for everything, it will be for a bit less time. We've decided that we feel it would be better to have weekly RE, but for a slightly shorter lesson, than to not do it or to risk missing it out. And the same is true of music and modern foreign languages, history, geography, art, technology, the whole of the broader curriculum. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Have I said enough?
No, that's given us a really good picture of what's happening, I think. Jill, sorry, you said you wanted to say something earlier. Did you?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I do appreciate, like you, I'm not working in a school all the time. But from my point of view, in terms of supporting schools with the RE, one thing I have noted over the last few weeks, where Ofsted are beginning to go in and have these sort of interim visits. They are not inspections. They are, conversations about how things are going. But what I see the reports of these Ofsted visits for all of the Church of England schools, and one of the themes that I've noted is that they are making an explicit comment on whether the school is delivering a broad and balanced curriculum or not. And if it isn't, they are seeking some sort of explanation as to why that is not able to happen and what plan the school has to enable it to happen in due course. So I know, I've spoken with many church and community primary schools where the delivery of RE alongside other foundation subjects looks quite different, but I'm mindful that the expectation from the inspection service is that it shouldn't actually be looking different. And I know there is a tension there, a sort of a pragmatic tension there for schools.
Yeah, well, we'll pick that up in the next item, but that's a really good point. If I ask Jenny to say something about her school, Chris, and then we can open it to questions from members, from Liz and Jenny. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So welcome to Jenny as a new member. So I guess you're hitting the ground running a bit because we've welcomed you to the meeting and now we're asking you to do an item. But thanks anyway for just saying that you would do this. So thanks. Tell us a bit about your school and what's going on.
Thanks, Wendy. It's actually really nice because it's a good opportunity to just chat to people in the S.A.C.R.E and I have to say everybody's been so kind in welcoming me. So thank you for that.
Wait until the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm at William Farr School at Welton, and I have to say the senior staff have made the job very, very easy in terms of coming back to teach. Whilst virtual teaching is fine, I don't know about people around the room, but it's like meeting at a S.A.C.R.E, I guess. Being with people, being with your students, you can't beat it. And I'm just so thrilled to be here and actually teaching with my students, although they're in the next room teaching themselves right now. So we've got a staggered timetable, but everybody arrives at the same time and they are staggered in terms of leaving. When I say they arrive at the same time, we have a lot of people bussed in, so there is a natural stagger anyway with that. And students come straight to their tutor bases. And we've had to relocate where the tutor bases are, so they're all in bubbles. So I'm in the Year 10 team and we're all together now, whereas historically you would be in your teaching base for that. So that's been a change. In terms of the curriculum, we are all being able to teach our own subject in our own areas, which is an absolute blessing because if we were in fixed bases for that, for example, science, not be able to be taught across the curriculum because of the specialist equipment that would be needed. And whilst, in RE, we can take a lot of our resources with us, you can't take, the environment of your classroom and the posters and those kind of things with you. And they all contribute to that learning. So we are really lucky that we're still in our bases. But because of the staggers, we normally have a changeover time, and they've not been able to allow that. So a child at the far end of school finishes PE at 10:20 and has to miraculously appear in RE at 10:20. And whilst we can perform miracles, that's not really in the agenda here. So that's been quite tricky. But it's a small price to pay for being here and being able to deliver our curriculums. The other thing that the school have put in place, particularly for year 11 and year 13, is a period 6. So we have a 5-period day, and we stay Monday to Thursday to deliver a period 6 to those students. That, to start with, was absolutely fine, brilliant. As the year has progressed, the nights have got darker, it's dwindled. So I should have 17 straight after this meeting for a period 6, and I know that I've got 6. Some of that is due to not being able to get home. Some of it is due to they're just exhausted, and some we do have some students isolated as well. So that has made an impact. I'd say the biggest impact. I'm new to S.A.C.R.E, but I'm also new to being head of RE, having been in the school for 23 years. I've done various other roles, but I'm so excited about bringing new things to the RE curriculum, and speakers and visits, and obviously all of that is just on hold, which I know, given the great scheme of things, it's a tiny thing to mention, but actually I do feel like there's students that are missing out on that. And I usually have a speaker coming in in the next few weeks, and I'm looking at alternative methods like this to try and still have him, because his message is so powerful. And I was hoping to kind of use people at the S.A.C.R.E to sort of find out, like you're mentioning, Chris, about getting speakers from faith. That'd be great if we could find those connections as well to bring them into schools. But it's really, we kind of just have to just maintain being able to teach at the moment, and not try and do too much and overburden everybody. So the overriding thing is it's brilliant to be here, but it is getting tougher, and we've had more isolating, so we're now going into live streaming our lessons as well. So you're kind of setting on a virtual platform, you're collecting and delivering emails, you're delivering the lesson, and now we're live streaming the lesson. So we're trying to tick all those bases. It's hard.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Jenny. I've just noticed Councillor Whittington, you wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, it's really just a sort of a general question. Obviously, during COVID, we've heard incidents of where some schools have had outbreaks of COVID, and they've had to sort of send pupils home, and I guess it's relatively easier for children to self-isolate at home. I'm just wondering if schools have got issues with when members of staff potentially have to go into isolation. Has there been any sort of impact on the level of staff in the county because of COVID, or are most schools trying to cope? Because I was obviously wondering that potentially there's issues with isolation and teachers having to self-isolate. I'm presuming that the schools have to either cope with the shortages internally, or possibly look for supplies, supply teachers. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Mark.
I don't know the answer to that person. It's a shame Jill Chandanaya's not here, because she would have given us a broad answer to that, I think. Do you want to respond to that, Jenny?
Yes.
Or Liz?
Yes. So I've actually got one of my colleagues isolating at the moment in the RE department. Obviously, if you've come into contact with somebody and that was in school, somebody who's then later tested positive, and she was detected as one of the people that needed to isolate, it's a massive impact in terms of cost, I would say, on schools. So what they're trying to do here at William Farr is protect the staff that are here and not overburden them with taking further cover lessons. And you can imagine, because we've staggered everything, so at the minute a year group are on break, but I would be teaching if I was in the classroom right now. So if that year group that are on break, then who's free to teach them afterwards, because it's all staggered. It's not in the clear way that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
So the school have been really good. They've employed a lot more cover supervisors temporarily and employed cover staff, which obviously has a hit on budgets. So I don't know what's going to happen long term from that, but that's certainly what's happened. And of course, then that means the rest of the children that are here are without that specialist teacher for that part. So if it was any longer than a week, then I'd have to try and rejig our timetable to make sure some specialists went in and delivered some of the content.
Thanks for that, Jenny.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Liz, is your hand up, or is that my eyes playing tricks with me?
No, it is. It is.
No. Okay.
Okay. So in our schools where we've had staff with positive tests, actually that closes the bubble. So that means that class is then working at home and being supported via online learning. So we have worked really hard this year to develop our ICT resilience, I suppose would be one way of putting it, to make sure that we have got lots of practical things in place that we can maintain home learning adequately. It's not ideal, but it does fulfill at least some of our function and make sure that the rest of us in school are safe.
Yeah, get that. Yes, yeah. I see that. So, yeah, because the situation is bound to be different in a primary to a secondary school, isn't it? There are different considerations to be made all around, really. Cherry, did you want to say something?
Yes, a couple of things. Just to say that as a governor, when things like this have actually happened in school I'm associated with, then I think probably everybody's found out that a year group has had to isolate. And if the teacher has actually also got COVID. Also, as a grandparent with children at school, the same thing has happened where a year group has, obviously I've been informed that they're out of school. I have to say that what's been very impressive in all these situations is the home learning that the schools have actually managed to provide for the pupils. And where pupils have not had, if you like, the technology, schools seem to be working incredibly hard to try and make sure they have, as indeed a community is trying to support that. And with regards to the finance, from what I can see from being a life member of NAHT, I still get communication. It seems to me that the unions and associations are bringing the subject of funding up with the government with regards to the additional costs that schools are actually having to take on at this present time.
Yes, I think there is special COVID funding for schools, and from what I've seen of school budgets, it seems to be on the whole spectrum. So some schools I've spoken to have said, you know, we've no money, we've nothing, and other schools have said, well, actually, we've managed to save a bit of money during this time. So it's a bit of a mixed picture there. But I think, Chris, that's been a really useful update from people, and you know, it depends where we are after Christmas, but it would be good to have that as an item next term, I think, just to see how people are getting on, because we do want to show that we're supporting schools and we want to know what's happening in relation to RE, but also the broader picture as well. Okay.
Thanks for that, Wendy. Thanks for sharing that for me as well.
Okay. Okay. It's okay. I want you to chair the next one, so that's the next item. So that's all right.
I've just checked. Has everybody spoken that wants to on that? And I've noticed that Amanda's made a point too in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Right. Just going between chat and agendas. Right. And can I ask Wendy to present on the next item, which is item 11? I've got a freedom of information request.
No, it's. Have I got the wrong one? Is it the inspection framework next, or am I looking at the wrong
item 10, update on the education framework?
Yeah.
It's the one before that, Chris. It's the.
Sorry. Yeah. Item 10, update on the education framework 2019 and the implications for RE. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Yes, I would start by saying that in my garage, I've got what I might describe as a fairly ancient artefact. And that artefact is the original Ofsted inspection framework, the very first one. And occasionally, nostalgically, I browse through this and have a look, and I reflect at how the inspection framework has changed over the years since the 1990s. And it's interesting, really, because in many ways it's changed dramatically, and in some ways it's starting to come full circle, because when Ofsted was invented, as it were, it came very heavy on schools. Schools had huge teams, without a word of exaggeration. I remember when I was first an inspector, going to inspect a secondary school, and I think I was more scared than the school, actually, because I had no idea what I was doing. And there were actually around 12 of us on the inspection team. And believe it or not, those of you who are unaware of Ofsted's doings, we inspected every subject, and we were there for a whole week. Now, that's quite a scary thought now, isn't it? When you think that compared to that, we now have 1 or 2 inspectors going in for maybe 1 or 2 days. And I think it's just worth reflecting on that, and how the process has changed over the years, and what a different animal it is now, really. But it is quite interesting that now we seem to be coming back to a bit more of a focus on subjects. And that was the first thing I thought about. The second thing that really led to this item on the agenda is that up until this term, we've had a standing item on spiritual, moral, social, cultural education for the past 14, 15 years or so on our S.A.C.R.E agendas. And again, originally that included loads of comments about RE, and not so much now. So as we've got new members, and as we had a new framework last year, we thought it might be a good idea to have a brief update. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share some slides with you. Now, those of you who do lots of training, Jill, I'm looking at you now, will know that when you're doing this, it's an odd feeling, because you do feel as if you're in a room talking to yourself. But that is, in fact, what I'm going to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Because, Chris, I think it would be easier if I took questions at the end, if that's okay. Okay. So if you just give me a moment here while I get the slide up. No, I haven't got that.
Very good.
Hang on a minute. Let's see. Can everyone see? Can you see that, Chris? Because if you can see it, most people can.
See it. Yeah.
You can see it. Okay. So I've got something flashing at the sides of me, not in a rude way, but in a anyway, if you can see it all right, that's okay. So the first thing is why there was a change last year at all, because actually the change was quite dramatic. And this was mainly because previously there had been an emphasis on data in Ofsted inspections, and they were really focused on English and maths. And if some of you may remember, science originally, and there was lots of teaching to the test, that's teaching to SATs and exams and so forth. So Ofsted, during that time, tended to take its eye off other subjects, that is, the rest of the national curriculum and RE. In other words, you got the impression when inspectors came in that all they were really bothered about was English and maths. And the reason you got that impression was because it was true. That was what they were interested in. They were just looking at data. They looked at loads of data before they came into the school, and they came very often with what felt like pre-judgments. And I do remember, and there are some things that really stick in your mind, aren't they? Whatever job you do. I do remember being a lead inspector and going into a school and was about to put the school into special measures. And the head teacher said to me, well, you could have done this inspection at home, by which she meant we'd looked at all the data before and we'd almost made our minds up before we even went into the school. So there was that feel about inspections that, oh, they've made their mind up. They're just looking at data. And finally, Ofsted have seen, I think what a lot of us have seen for a long time really, that there is this danger of equating performance and learning. with standardized measurements. I read a very interesting book last summer called The Tyranny of Metrics. It's not just about schools, it's about data in all areas of life. And Jerry Muller makes the point that not everything that's important is measurable, and much that is measurable is unimportant. And I like that quote. So the 2019 Education Inspection Framework shows this move towards the wider curriculum. It's got curriculum very much at the centre, and it's brought these, what have now become known as the 3 I's, the intent, implementation and impact of the curriculum. And it looks at these through these 4 judgment areas. The quality of education, which is where the curriculum and RE sits. That's largely where these 3 I's are. Behaviour and attitudes, personal development and leadership and management. So that's what inspections look like at the moment. And this is what Sean Harford, who's the Director of Education at Ofsted, had to say. He said, the curriculum is a framework for setting out the aims of a programme of education, including the aims and vision, the framework for setting out the aims of a programme of education, including the knowledge and skills to be gained at each key stage. So what he's saying is the school, not just RE or any subject, the school should have an aim and a vision about its curriculum, and that should be mirrored in different subjects and different areas. Now, it needs to translate that intent into a structure and narrative, and that Ofsted are calling the implementation. So you've got your aim, how are you putting it into practice? And then how are you evaluating it? What knowledge and understanding do pupils have against those expectations? And that's the impact. And you can probably see, just looking at those, how there's considerable overlap. But this was a new thing for Ofsted. These 3 I's are new, or not so new now, but they were. And Ofsted said that this was the question that they were trying to answer through inspections. What is it like to attend this school? What does it feel like to be a pupil in this school? And they said they will use all available evidence to evaluate what it's like to be a learner in the provision. Okay, so they're trying to take a different perspective. They're not just asking head teachers, they're not just asking senior leaders, they've got a much broader focus. So the new inspection process does start still with the top level view, starts with senior leaders, what's on offer, who's it offered to, how, when, what do leaders understand about things like intent, sequencing the curriculum, choices and so on. Yeah, they would start with that, but here's the difference. They're now including middle leaders in what they call, and I'll pick this up in a few moments, a deep dive. And this is where middle or subject leaders are very much involved, gathering evidence on the curriculum's intent, implementation and impact through a sample of subjects. So middle leaders, subject leaders are now back in focus. For years, they'd been left out of the picture. I mean, I guess for middle leaders, it's kind of double-edged. The subject leaders I've spoken to, some of them would be quite pleased if that had stayed the case. But now they are subject to interviews by Ofsted inspectors. And if they're chosen for a deep dive, quite intense pressure, I have to say. And all those things are brought together in evidence to test whether any issues identified during deep dives are systemic. For example, if there's a deep dive in geography and some weak teaching was seen, then they'd come back to the top level view and question more broadly about teaching and learning, and perhaps look at other subjects as well. So they're bringing the evidence together. Now, the question is this education inspection framework good for RE or not? Well, I think on balance, yes, because inspectors now are reporting much more about compliance and where improvements are needed. Gillian mentioned a few minutes ago about even the generic monitoring visits this term, and I concur with her on that they are looking at the broader curriculum. So they're thinking about the broad curriculum and our schools meeting their statutory responsibilities. And even when RE isn't the focus of a deep dive, any lack of provision will be followed up under compliance. And it may, and I say this tentatively, it may mean that school leaders need to consider giving subject leaders a bit more non-contact time or time for CPD and so on to support their work, because if not, can they be held responsible? If you're going to be under the spotlight for your subject, but you haven't had time to prepare your planning and think about what you're doing, can you really be held responsible for the quality of the discussions that you have with inspectors? It does highlight the difference between primary and secondary structure as well, in terms of what kind of things will be asked of subject leaders. So the new focus is on the curriculum, and this is a quote from Amanda Spielman, the head of Ofsted. Interesting quote. She says, "The vast accumulated wealth of human knowledge and what we choose to pass on to the next generation through teaching in our schools, the curriculum, must be at the heart of education." The cynics amongst you might be saying, well, why is that the case now? And it wasn't years ago. Curriculum has always been a part of Ofsted, but maybe not so central as it is now. Now, when this phrase was announced, some of us had a bit of a snigger about it or wondered what on earth it was. What is a deep dive? It's a term that has been used in business and so forth for many years. And for ages, Ofsted had talked about drilling down into subjects and so forth. But they've used this phrase, the deep dive, to look intensely or with more focus in a small number of subjects. Now, I'll explain what it means in a minute, but this is a very interesting quote from a head teacher after one of these early inspections, after the new framework had been introduced. And he said, "I had never had so little to do in an inspection. The deep dives apply the methodology of school improvement with laser precision. Inspectors don't want this polluted by head teachers." That's an interesting word, isn't it? Polluted. "So look to middle and class-based leaders to gather and confirm their view." And a colleague in his school said, "We were encouraged to feel like we were working with colleagues, and we did." Now, that might not be the experience of all head teachers, and I'm sure it's not, but it's an interesting quote from one of them, that a head felt that he had stepped back more from the process and it was in the hands more of teachers and middle leaders and so forth. I would say something about church schools and deep dives, and I would ask, when I've just gone through this slide, I'll ask Gillian if she wants to add anything here. Deep dives do not apply to every single school. This is because, as you can see here, because of the requirements of Section 48 and SIME's inspections. So voluntary controlled schools can have RE as one of their deep dives, but voluntary aided schools cannot. Gillian, I feel like I'm shouting in the dark here because I can only see my slide, but do you want to say anything about this? Because you'll know more about the structure of it than me, really.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify here, and actually this is very important because I'm aware that there were several head teacher briefings in Lincolnshire that gave inaccurate information about this and told Church of England schools that they could not get deep dives across the board, and that is not accurate.
That's right.
Any type of school that has its RE inspected for standards or for quality of education through the denominational inspection process, so that Section 48 process, cannot have a deep dive in RE from Ofsted. So that would include voluntary aided Church of England and Methodist schools and all of the other faith schools, Catholic schools, Muslim schools, Jewish schools, and so on. They could still have a comment about RE as part of another area of the inspection process, the personal development area, but they won't have a sort of a deep investigation of the quality of the RE curriculum. Voluntary controlled schools, which are legally required to deliver the agreed syllabus, can have that deep dive in RE, and we have been working very hard to make sure that the voluntary controlled Church of England Methodist schools in Lincolnshire know that they could get a deep dive in Ofsted. Thanks, Wendy.
Yes, thank you. You're absolutely right. When the framework came out in 2019, in almost any school I visited, any church school, there was confusion. In fact, in one school, a school had even been given conflicting advice from someone who was part of the inspectorate. So I don't think Ofsted were always that clear. But anyway, that's how it stands for church and faith schools. Now, the mantra that Ofsted are using for deep dives is, let's see this in action together. So they're putting across this idea that they really want to work with schools. They really want to get inside the school and see what's happening. And they really want to assess the quality of education by gathering evidence in a very, very systematic way. And that's why they're focusing on a small number of subjects. So they want to use samples of evidence which need to be triangulated. So they want to look at evidence from senior leaders. They want to look at evidence from teachers. They want to look at evidence from pupils and so on. So in primary schools, generally, the deep dive is in reading, often maths, and then one or more foundation subjects, and that includes RE. In secondary schools, 4 to 6 subjects. And just before lockdown, when we were looking at SMSC comments, I was adding a bit at the end, telling you what the deep dive had been for a particular school. I'll just go back there a minute. So that's the picture. That's not to say they won't look at any of the subject at all. What it's saying is that these are the subjects they are going to focus on. Okay, but if they're inspecting teaching in the afternoon, for example, they may see a range of subjects. It's just that they won't investigate them as deeply. Now, I did ask Steve to send out to you an example of an inspection report, which I hope you may have had time to look at. The reason I did that was because I wanted you to see what the structure of these new inspection reports is like. And the question some colleagues raised on a training day, this was pre-lockdown, primary and secondary colleagues said they weren't sure whether in fact the new inspection reports are giving enough detail compared to previous reports. In other words, they were saying, has Ofsted gone too far the other way? In trying to make itself more accessible, is it not really giving enough information? And in fact, if you had time to look at this inspection report, which is an infant school in Leicester, but remember, reports are in the public domain, so we can look at them. This infant school got outstanding, and RE was one of its deep dives. But actually, in the report, RE gets very little mention. There's a line or two that mentions RE. So for all the intensity of the work, the head was a bit surprised not to have more comments in the report. More than that, she told me, she spent ages with an inspector talking about SMSC, which hardly got mentioned at all. So I think there are quite a few questions, we might want to raise when we're back to normal and we're looking at our own reports. But if you haven't had a chance to read it, do, because it's great that an infant school was providing such brilliant RE that the school overall got outstanding, but it certainly left questions in the mind of the head teacher. But clearly she got outstanding. She wasn't going to question it with the inspector. She wasn't going to, say, oh, can we have a lower grade, please, because we don't think you've looked carefully enough at everything. But it's an interesting point she makes about detail. This is not on your slides because I just added it last week. What does this mean now? Gillian was just talking about the monitoring visits that have taken place this term. They've really just been to see how schools are coping with COVID, managing the curriculum and so forth. I think myself, Ofsted are in a bit of a quandary about what to do from January. They may restart again in January. They may be without grades. They may be more like a monitoring visit. There is some opposition from head teachers because of the upheaval around COVID. Heads are saying, no, we don't want this. We're not ready yet. And the ASCL has absolutely urged Ofsted not to return to full inspection, but to explore providing remote support to struggling schools. I doubt very much if that will happen. Interestingly, one of the reasons that it would be problematic to resume Ofsted inspections is because school leaders who serve as inspectors, and that's the majority of inspectors, may be busy with managing issues around COVID and can't break away from this work in order to carry out inspections. It's a big wait and see. Ofsted line on this is, yes, we are going to come back. We are going to resume inspections from January. So, you know, we shall see. I don't know. Anyway, oh, I've got to get to my start window. So that's where we are at the moment. I think I'm all right there now. Chris, yes? Are you with me, Chris?
I am, Wendy. Thank you for that. And there's some.
So that's a summary, really.
Thank you. There's some items in the chat as well.
Yes, let me have a.
You might not have had a chance to see.
No, I couldn't see those.
So Amanda Grant, the briefings were inaccurate.
Yes, they're inaccurate. I was concerned.
Mark.
Yes, good point about deep dives, I think, through denominational inspections, yeah.
Could I just jump in on that one, Wendy?
Yes, sure.
Just to be clear, within the SIAMS inspection, which is a specific version of a denominational inspection, which is just for Church of England Methodist schools, we wouldn't refer to this as a deep dive.
No.
In any sense. And when we look at RE, we do look at RE in voluntary controlled church schools and involuntary aided church schools, but the SIAMS report will not make a comment on standards in RE in voluntary controlled schools. They will look at the RE curriculum, they will make sure that pupils are getting their entitlement as per the Church of England Education Office, but they won't report on standards in RE, and that is why a voluntary controlled church school could get that deep dive from Ofsted, just to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Julia.
I take Mark Plater's point as well at how short the sentences are and the style. Indeed, as I say, some months ago now that I was running a training day, and I suppose there were about 20 people on it, and they had lots of copies of different inspection reports under the new framework, and they were quite concerned about exactly what Mark's saying there, that they didn't seem to give that much depth or that much information. And I think it'll be for us to make our own decisions about that when we start looking again, hopefully, in the new year, Chris. And, you know, we can make judgments for ourselves, can't we?
Thank you for that, Wendy. Excellent presentation and a lot of depth and information. Wendy, do you think you could put the slide back up of the book you were recommending, so people got that? Sorry, which was that? The Tyranny of Metrics.
Oh, well, I'll send that. I'll get Steve to send that out with the full details to everybody, because then I can give you the publisher and everything. It's actually on Amazon.
Splendid.
A head teacher recommended it to me, and I read it in like 2 sittings, because although you'd think, oh, it's not the most gripping title, it talks about data from everything in medicine, the military, education, and how it's often skewed. Well, I mean, we know that anyway when we did Ofsted inspections, but it just talks about the good and bad influences that data can have. And it's quite an interesting thing. So yeah, I'll make a note. I'll send it to Steve to send that out. Got that.
Brockway has just made the point about pre-written sentences and just slotted in.
Well, Ofsted have always been accused of that. Many, many years ago, Ofsted were told off because I remember this because it was the time I was doing inspections myself, and people started to notice that inspections reports were sounding strangely familiar, and it was though there was a template, and an inspector would do, say, 10 schools, but would use a sort of template and just slotted things in. Ofsted were warned in it's no small way about this until they absolutely must not do that. So let's hope that that's not the case, but it does feel a bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, very much for that. Any other points that colleagues want to make? If you indicated the chat, but yeah, I think we've just taken it all on board.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, returning
Which
to...
minute was that? Oh, sorry, I thought someone's hand had gone up. No, it's not. I'm imagining it.
It was just to say, Wendy, just to make everybody smile, that I've got a photograph of you talking about the Ofsteds in the 1990s.
Yeah.
The very first Ofsted that, as a head teacher, I ever had. If you probably remember all of the information you had to send away, boxes of it. Well, just to make everybody smile, the next time we get together, I've got a photograph of myself and my team waving goodbye to this stuff as we sent it off.
Well, I can remember.
Everybody smile.
I remember it very well, and I remember driving to several schools myself to pick it up, and then arriving back at an education centre with my boot full of stuff and dishing it out. You know, you used to have your team, and then these people would be given files and files to take home with them, and it's quite astonishing. You probably also remember, Cherry, and this might be interesting to some of you, that also the lead inspector used to have a colleague with them, and before pre-inspection, weeks before, they not only met with the school, they met with governors and parents to talk about all this massive stuff that they'd been through, and to tell them more or less, well, this is what we're going to look at in the inspection. I mean, it was crazy, wasn't it? Crazy days, really, because it just took up far too much time and effort. So I think that's when you got months of notice and people got so stressed. It was just awful. So it's better now that you only get the phone call the day before, I think, really, on balance. Although many heads would not agree with me on that.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Wendy.
Okay.
And Jenny has said thank you as well. And Amanda remembers being a lead inspector and totally care with the past. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you for that, colleagues. And that was item 10, wasn't it? Am I checking? Yeah. So item 11, I've got a Freedom of Information request funding of S.A.C.R.Es. Can I ask Wendy, and I don't think Jill's here, just to present this item. I understand the closing date for responding for this request is today.
Yes. If I just find the thing. This is quite interesting because it just for a long time, National S.A.C.R.E have been asking us about how well our S.A.C.R.Es are funded. And then this Freedom of Information request was sent to all local authorities. So I've actually had nothing to do with it because it was sent to the LA. There are about 9 questions, some of which have subdivisions, very, very detailed questioning about funding. And for example, the percentage of funding from the Central School Services block, and so forth and so forth. They're obviously trying to get to the root of how well S.A.C.R.Es all over the country are funded and whether it's satisfactory. Our S.A.C.R.E our local authorities stepped up really quickly, got into gear. Jill Chandler was great about getting the information together, and I know it's gone in on time. Just for a point of information for members who are maybe quite new, our S.A.C.R.E has been relatively well funded compared to many other local authorities. Having said that, the funding has remained exactly the same for about 14 or 15 years now, with no change at all. So it's good, but we haven't had any change to our funding, but neither have we had cuts. So I guess, Chris, you could say it's kind of double-edged, really. We've been well funded, but we haven't had any increase, but we haven't had any cuts either. So the Freedom of Information thing's been done. I guess if anyone wants to see the questions, Steve would be able to pass those on to them. Thanks
for that, Wendy. Jackie, did you want to speak?
Yes, please, Chairman. I found these questions very interesting, actually, and I understand fully why they're doing them. They're trying to find out the funding from the local authorities for the various S.A.C.R.Es. But I wonder if they've really put out such useful questions that they could have done. So, for instance, an awful lot of the schools are academies, and funding for all this sort of stuff is going to be within the academies rather than the local authorities. So a local authority might come back and say, actually, we're spending nothing on training, but the academies are spending a lot of money on training. So you're still left without any knowledge about the actual expenditure. Now, this specifically here, they want to know how much local authorities are spending. But I do think that that's kind of half the question. If a local academy down the road has got all its training with a contract with a company somewhere else, then the LA just isn't going to put that money in. But that is not a reflection of its support or its goodwill towards the S.A.C.R.E. Now, as you say, this one is pretty well funded. At least I think it is. I went through this thinking, yes, we do this, yeah, we do that, and that's rather comforting. And I understand also that the S.A.C.R.E is the overarching body, if you like, but I do still feel that this would be a more useful exercise if they sent it to the academies and the schools as well. Find out, are they aware? How much do they contribute? How much is actually spent? It's almost as if they've done half an exercise here. They may go on and do more. It may lead to more, but I hope it does, because I don't think the data we're going to get is complete.
Thanks for that, Jack.
Thank you.
Okay, Gillian, you wanted to say something.
Yes, please. And I have to apologise in advance. I've got a cat that keeps climbing over the top of me. So if a cat hoves into view, I apologise. As you know, I work in an advisory capacity to several other S.A.C.R.Es as well as Lincolnshire, one of which has a zero budget for S.A.C.R.E and has had a zero budget for S.A.C.R.E for many years. Part of what's going on here, I think, with S.A.C.R.E is the fact that local authorities receive the central schools funding block from the government to fund certain statutory duties. And one of the statutory duties that they have to fund is the work of S.A.C.R.E. And in parliamentary briefings, there has been confirmation, and questions to the schools minister, there has been confirmation that S.A.C.R.Es do have responsibility to support all of the schools and academies within their local authority region, whether the academies take it up or not. So actually, I think what S.A.C.R.E is seeking to do here is to make sure that local authorities are meeting that statutory duty by using the funding that has been assigned to the local authority to fulfil that statutory duty. I think what S.A.C.R.E is seeking to ascertain here is what proportion of that central schools funding block is assigned to the statutory work of S.A.C.R.E. Now, S.A.C.R.E has in 2018 suggested that that should be 2% of that funding block, which works out for Lincolnshire at something around £25,000 or a little more than that, I believe, for Lincolnshire. And so where you have local authorities that have a zero budget for the statutory work of S.A.C.R.E, that would be a concern. So I suspect what they're seeking to do there is to say, you know, what proportion of that central school funding block money is being assigned to the statutory work of S.A.C.R.E, and how might S.A.C.R.E make recommendations to local authority about what percentage they should set aside in order to meet that duty effectively.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly helpful. I mean, that's really helpful. Thank you so much. Sorry, butting in. Sorry, Gillian.
That is exactly the point. That I think that's exactly why S.A.C.R.E have done that. I think, Jill. I support a S.A.C.R.E that has had a drastic cut to its budget, and we're well below the 2%. And I think we're hoping that this may give some power for us, you know, asking for more money and justifying it, because we were, you know, this S.A.C.R.E, particular S.A.C.R.E, was not included in any discussions about the cuts, and just thought it could do it without any reference to anything. So they, faced with this freedom of information request, you know, have now got to actually get their act together and think about, well, you know, what percentage are we allocating to S.A.C.R.E? So that's absolutely right, and that's the purpose of it, I'm sure.
And Amanda's just said she concurs with Gillian's comments. It was always a tension with other S.A.C.R.Es. And thank you for your comments too, Jackie. And Sherry's just said, found these comments really useful to understand this item. Many thanks. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay.
Moving on, because we need to
move
on. So I've got the, Gillian, this is your report, item 12, Director and RE Advisors report. Thank you.
Yes, it is. And look, the cat has landed. The laptop is perched very delicately on the end of my knees. So if I drop it, apologies. This is just to very, very quickly update you on the work that I have been able to do over the past few months. Obviously, similarly to Wendy, I've had to adapt to delivering things mostly virtually. A couple of things to note. What we are finding delivering our support and our training like this is that we are actually increasing the numbers of schools and teachers that we are able to support because we are able to deliver the training more flexibly. So I am now putting on multiple versions of the same training or support meeting, which I couldn't do previously because I would be spending hours and hours in the car driving around Greater Lincolnshire. So that flexibility has really helped. Similarly, we are not asking teachers to travel to a separate location, therefore they feel more able to attend. And, you know, it has had implications for costs as well for schools, that we're able to bring down the costs of things. The other thing just to note for me is that one of my colleagues retired in July. And as a result, in these straitened financial times, I have taken on her workload alongside my own. So I now have responsibility for helping schools prepare for the church school inspection process. And that has implications for my capacity in terms of RE advisory work, although as every teacher on the planet will know, if you give us more, we somehow function like TARDISes and manage to increase our capacity on the inside and get twice as much work done. But really, that is it from me. And if anyone has any questions about my work, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Gillian, for that. Any questions? Okay. And that's splendid. And you do remind me that one of the advantages of Zoom and Teams is that we can do more. I'm finding that with other organisations, and also the level of attendance at S.A.C.R.E has considerably improved, and for which I'm grateful. Okay, I've got big ideas in religious education. Can I ask Mark Plater and Wendy Harrison to present this report?
I'm quite happy for Mark to kick off on this one.
Okay. Hello, folks. Good to be with you again. It's interesting. There have been in the background a number of different people and organisations who've been thinking about how to structure the teaching of religion in schools. Most of you are probably aware of the Commission report, which suggested our focus should be in RE on religion and worldviews. Well, another project that's been going on in recent years, led by Barbara Wintersco, who used to be the HMI for RE nationally, and she's been looking at the work done in some of the subjects like science, where they've tried to identify within the science curriculum what are the big ideas that science tries to explore and that might provide a kind of framework for developing science education in schools. And Barbara Wintersco decided it would be worth thinking about what were the big ideas for RE. So she's come up with this that I've put in front, which is a booklet about big ideas for religious education. And what these big ideas are, she's divided up into 6 areas of ideas, really. And if people are interested, it's very easy to find this stuff online. And if not, I could send through to Steve to have circulated, a copy of this booklet if people wanted. But these big ideas are the idea of continuity and change and diversity, that each religious group is constantly in a state of change, and it builds on a history from the past, and it contains within itself a range of diversity. So that's big idea number 1. Big idea number 2 is that people express things in both words and other form. So through art, through music, and through drama and such like. So all of the religions are involved in expressing who and what they are in words and these other forms. All religions are exploring the idea of what does it mean to live a good life, and what is right and wrong, and what is appropriate, and what leads to healthy living as opposed to destructive living, and so on. So that's big idea number 3. Big idea number 4 is the fact that all of us want to make sense of life and the experience that we have in life. And so that's developed another kind of contained area of this big idea, making sense. Big idea number 5 is to do with the whole thing of community and culture and power influence within it. So structures of organization and such like. And any religion will have some kind of structure around it that helps it to function together as an organization, but also society at large will create those kinds of structures and organizations to make sense of things. Then the last big idea is just the big picture, which is talking about us here in the world as part of a universe, as part of a multi-universe. Where do we all fit into this? Is there some greater force out there and such like? So that's big idea number 6. So she suggests that it would be possible to organize the RE curriculum around these 6 different ideas. And so a little while back, she sent out an invitation to various people around and about to say, would you like to take these ideas and develop some resources that we could then circulate as examples of how to do this in practice in the school context? Because it's fine having these big ideas, but what does it mean in practice? So both Wendy and I, or we at BG, there's Julian Stern is one of our other staff at Bishop Grosseteste University now, and the 2 of us put in a bid and have been accepted for that. And along with, there are about 12 different writers, and what they're going to do is try to come up with some resources for each of these different 6 areas, exploring how that could be developed as an idea with Key Stage 1, 2, 3, 4, developing a sense of continuity of understanding and development of understanding throughout the age groups under those 6 headings. So Wendy and I have both had the task of working on that. And I think we've got about 3 or 4 months to do it. I think it has to be done by Easter or so next year, or just before Easter. So quite an interesting challenge. At BG, we're intending to use some of our own students and schools to come up with ideas with us and test them out in a school context. And I expect Wendy has her own way of testing them out in a school context, because they want us to do that. So that we can actually say these are workable things that have been tried in practice and now are worth publishing and making more widely available. So an interesting task for us, and see how it goes.
It will be. I would. That's exactly as it is. I would just stress to people, in case you're just wondering, these big ideas are not to replace a locally agreed syllabus. They're big ideas to consider alongside whatever RE curriculum you might be following. I've worked with Barbara some years ago, so I was quite interested to take up this work and see her again. I remember when she was HMI, I was absolutely terrified of her. So it was nice to work with her a few years ago and actually become friends. And also we're working with people who are quite well known in the RE world, such as Dave Francis and Professor Denise Cush. So we're in quite good company, Mark. We'll be all right. So we'll feed back to you on how it goes. I think we've been given our homework, haven't we, to get cracking. So we'll feed back to you on that one, Chris.
Mark, Wendy, that's hugely exciting. I mean, I've really enjoyed hearing about that. I'm sure we all have. Yes, please do keep us in touch, perhaps via email, because it's a while to the next.
Yes, we will. Yeah, we will.
Yeah, and congratulations on you both for being involved in that. I think it's brilliant. Okay. So that was item 13, big ideas on religious education. I wondered what that title meant, and now I've been delighted to find out. And I've got just to look at. I wonder if I can seek a volunteer, please, or can we volunteer someone to do our opening reflections at the next meeting? I think they're kind of quite important. They always help me stay focused. Would somebody like to volunteer? Is inspiration, is touching somebody, or perhaps you'd like to drop me an email along the way. Then in the next week or two would be. Yeah, unless you want to nominate someone.
If somebody doesn't volunteer, they'll have me again, and they won't want that.
I think we'd be delighted. I don't think that's a threat at all. I think there was two things before we finish. I think we're going on to dates and times of the next meeting, and there are the dates ahead of there. How would members feel? We've had quite a busy agenda today, all in one meeting, and I think I'd like to thank everybody for doing that. It was a tremendous achievement to stay focused. How would members feel about more frequent meetings? I don't mean massively more frequent, but it is within our gift to meet more often if you feel that's necessary. Or perhaps the easiest thing is, would anybody object to that?
I think, to be absolutely honest, I would find it tight.
Okay.
For me, it is easier to have a longer agenda because then you commit to the reading and the work, rather, because when we start going back to car journeys and things, that's going to increase numbers of journeys and cost and all sorts. So for me, I would prefer, but I will go with the group, what the group decides.
Good point, Jackie. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll just assume that, in fact, we're in general agreement with Jackie on that, unless I'm told otherwise. That works for me. Right, I think we made some other change, and I can't remember what it was, Steve. Did we change the title of the chair to chair?
Yeah, well done, Chairman.
It was about chair. It was about chair and chairman.
Okay, I mean, we were thinking of going to chair rather than chairman. If people don't massively object, it just brings us into line with other organisations.
Oh, it's Chairman, it's me again. I'm sorry to be such a pain. I've been very good today. I think we've got to be careful about being politically correct. You are the chairman, and it seems ridiculous referring to you as a chair. In full council, the chairman won't respond if we refer as chair. It's just, I'm not into this political correct stuff. It's we are courteous and all the rest of it, but you are the chairman. So can we just not leave it to our own personal responses? If somebody wants to call you chair and you're happy with either, you know?
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Thanks. So sorry to be sorry.
Chairman, I would support those comments. I hate that expression, chair.
Who's that?
Bob Adams.
Oh, right. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah.
I think we're agreed on leaving things as they are. That's fine. And okay, so that leaves us with dates and times of the next meeting.
Sorry, Chair, could I?
Yeah, do. Yes, Chair.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if I do call you Chair, it's because I'm so used to using this term now, because I have been part of meetings where previously this conversation has been happening now for a great many years, and where different bodies have made decisions where you've had chair. So if I do call you chair, it's just because it's so many years now I've been calling the chairman chair. Okay.
I'm fine with that, Sherry. In fact, it fits with what Jackie has just said, that we leave it up to people. There'll be no rule either way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And thank you everybody for your contribution on everything today. I think it's been a brilliant meeting. Right, and so it only leaves me to wish you a happy Christmas. and any other festivals that are occurring between now and when we next meet.
Hear, hear.
Okay.
And thank you very much, Chair. Very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Bye.
Bye-bye.